I'm very excited to be here with you guys tonight. And I thought that I would start with a massive download that I received today. It wasn't anything crazy, but the simplicity of it really struck a chord within me. And I went to the gym this morning, and a friend of mine walked up to me, and it was really funny. He said, "What is that? How do you do all that? How do you know so much?" And then I just gave him whatever answer came to me in that moment. But then when I went back home, I decided to go into a seated meditation and ask my guides, "Hey, spirit guides," which my guides are a council. They're the higher council of light, which includes Merlin, which includes a bunch of guides, including all of you guys, because we're in this now moment together. And so all the informations that are coming at me from different directional angles right now are including you, your higher selves. So it's almost like a network, if you will. And so when I speak of the guides, which you guys will hear me talk about the guides a lot, I'm referring to Merlin, I'm referring to the higher council of Sirius, and a bunch of other guides as well. So I went into meditation and I asked my guides, why is it that I'm constantly soul streaming information or blocks of cosmic information throughout the day? And why is it that they never stop? It's incessant. And the response that came in truly invited like an earthquake in my brain. It was that powerful. It jolted me. So what they said was that I mimic the Akashic records. And then I said, what do you mean that I mimic the Akashic records? And for those of you who are watching who don't know what the Akashic records are, the Akashic records are a living library, like a living, breathing library of everything that's ever happened, everything that is happening, and everything that will happen, including every potential that might have happened, that might be happening, and might be happening in the future. So the Akashic records, if you think of it as the information that we receive from the Grand Central Sun, if you guys are in the spiritual community, you will hear people talk about the Great Central Sun or the Grand Central Sun, which is the storehouse of all of this information. All this information is contained within the Akashic records. So I asked them, well, what do you mean by me mimicking the Akashic records? Well, they said, Phil, the Akashic records would not be a living library if it was rejecting perspective. It is the library of everything that's ever existed, is existing, and will exist because it welcomes all perspective without judgment. And they said, you do a good job at not judging the information that streams in and welcoming it into your library. And you're actually saying to these thought forms, because these thought forms are truly like little beings. Think of them as like fairies, or think of them as like, sometimes we call them demons. Whatever the case is, every thought that we receive wants to be heard. Every thought that we receive wants to be acknowledged, and every thought that we receive wants to be validated, as do we, right? It's like when you do something good for someone, you want them to see it. I feel like that's part of the human design. We've been designed to want to be seen. In a way, God split himself in, or herself in, or itself in a million pieces so that it can see and interact with itself. So what we're all seeking is acknowledgement. And so what the guides were saying to me is that my mimicking the Akashic records is that I'm not curating, I'm actually welcoming every thought that I receive, and I'm saying to them, you have a rightful place within this living library because you are valid. And that was the download I got today. And then it went even deeper. And then that's when I had to exit my meditation, because sometimes it gets really intense, you know. Then they said, the reason why you're receiving downloads throughout the day is because these thought forms feel safe enough with you, like they're not being judged, like they're not going to get rejected, like you're not going to close the door on them. So they feel safe enough to keep coming back to you. How crazy is that? So they feel safe enough to be housed within the library that I'm connected to. I don't shun them. I don't reject them. I don't deny access to the library. I don't deny their access. And I thought that that was so profound. So I wanted to share that. And interestingly enough, it does tie into the subject of tonight. Not very much, but it does. And I'll explain, because everything is interconnected, as you guys know. So everything is like a huge soul matrix where everything interlaces to form this beautiful tapestry or this beautiful fabric of existence. So now I'm going to get into the topic of discussion. I've been excited to share this with you guys for about a week now. And funny enough, I got the download as to what this webinar would be about when I went to the bathroom one morning, and I got this zip file of information. And the title came to me. It was Feeling Wounds versus Feeding Wounds. And I don't know what's going to come out tonight. I have a little idea, but I wanted to conserve the excitement for tonight. Are you guys ready? Cool. So you will hear a lot of people talk about spiritual bypassing. Bypassing is when you don't want to face your own emotions, when you don't want to sit with the darkness, when you don't want to sit with those emotions that aren't always so comfortable. And so I'm going to break it down tonight, and we're going to start with feeding wounds. A lot of us, myself included, have the habit, or we've developed this habitual pattern of always feeding our wounds. You know, everyone, no one is exempt from this. No one is spared from this. We all have struggles, all of us. We all have a deep struggle that we deal with that sometimes spawns into many struggles that are branches of the same struggle, or we all have one struggle that we deal with. And I'm not sharing this from a place of victimhood. I'm sharing it factually, because we need the dark and we need the light in order to expand our consciousness in all directions. So whenever we struggle with something, like say that there's something that you've always wanted, whether it was love or the dream job, or you always wanted to move to Hawaii or to Brazil or to Italy, but there's something always getting in the way. Well, we have a habit as a human species to let that struggle get the best of us. And whenever we tell our friends, like, I don't understand why this hasn't unblocked for me yet. I don't understand why this particular area in my life hasn't yet unlocked, or the cork hasn't been removed. I don't understand why I'm not tapping into the abundant field that is this particular opportunity that I've always wanted or desired. So every time we go to that place, we actually feed the wound. We feed the wound. Okay, and I do it too. I am not an exception to this rule. I think a lot of us feed the wound. And this wound can be interlinked to so many things. It can be linked to distrust towards our universe or mistrust towards our universe. It can be linked to a lack of faith. It can be, and those are connected as well, right? So you can lump them all together. But there are so many things that it can connect to, including old fears that we held within our Akashic records, old fears that we held within our DNA memories, old fears that we held within the molecular makeup of our systems, that were passed down to us by our ancestors, that were passed down to us by our past selves in other realities on other timelines. So there are so many things that tie into this equation of feeding the wound rather than feeling the wound. All right. So sometimes we feel like, we might feel hopeless that day, like we're not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And when we talk about it to a friend, when we haven't processed the emotion, all we are doing is rinsing, repeating. So if anything, we're keeping ourselves entrapped within a cyclical pattern. And that same emotion, we think we rid ourselves of it when we talk about it because we're venting and then we feel clear. We feel like we're in the clear, when in fact, we've literally just transferred that energy onto the person that we were speaking to. And then like a fungus, it's going to regrow, it's going to reemerge to give you another chance to feel it rather than to feed it. Are you guys on board with me right now? Okay. So all of us are, I don't want to speak for anyone, but I feel like all of us are guilty of this. And it's understandable because this planet can hold a dense field sometimes. It's like a lower vibrational construct. And I know for me, we do create our reality. So most of the time I feel very high vibrational. However, I've noticed that if I don't meditate, my energy will plummet. And then I find myself like kind of like a 7-Up that's lost its fizz, or a kombucha that's lost its fizz. And I feel very flat again, which you could say that's the default factory setting of the planet at this time as we ascend into these higher octaves of existence. But for the most part, it can be a little dense here. That's why it's so important that we upkeep our meditations, that we keep up with our chanting. Chanting is a really great way to sculpt your auric field. Toning sculpts your auric field. But anyways, back to the subject. Sometimes the weather sucks and we're like, I don't like living here. It just, and all we do is we keep energizing the wound. Now the wound is associated with a timeline. It's associated with a belief that you still hold within that cannot see beyond the illusion, that cannot see beyond the limitations, that cannot see beyond the restrictions. So every time we feed a wound, we're feeding an old construct or a lower construct of consciousness. Okay, I'm going to slow down. Every time we feed a wound, we are feeding into a lower construct of reality that held limiting beliefs, that held fear-based emotions, that held anything that was rooted in separation, like my universe is not going to provide for me. My universe isn't going to let me move to Hawaii or to Italy. My universe is never going to come in and help me fulfill my dreams. So every time we feed into the feed into the wound, we are energizing a lower construct of consciousness, and that keeps us spiritually blind. Because those lower timelines don't want you to ascend yourself into the higher timelines where lack does not exist, where lack is inexistent. So our job here, our duty, our mission, our role is to start feeding into the higher timelines. And you can do this by feeling the wound rather than feeding the wound. Whenever we feel a wound, you guys will hear people in the spiritual community talk about integration a lot, or embodiment. You cannot integrate your light body unless you feel your emotions. If you're constantly feeding the wound, you are bypassing. Okay? I'm going to repeat that one more time. If you're constantly feeding the wound, you are feeding an old narrative or an old story, and you're keeping yourself in a time loop. You're keeping yourself on a lower vibrational timeline, and all you do is circle around the same thing over and over and over again. Okay? So you're not integrating that aspect back in. If anything, you are hurting yourself every time you feed that old wound. So that aspect of yourself never gets to grow. It never gets to merge into your being, into your wholeness, into the entirety of who you are. So the idea is to start feeling the wound. Because when you feel an emotion like sadness, when you feel an emotion like grief, when you feel an emotion like anger, like I'm angry at my universe for not providing for me, you are actually merging that other aspect of yourself into your body. You're integrating your light body. But if we perceive this emotion as a dark thing, we will keep feeding the wound rather than feeling the wound. But if you say, I'm going to consciously acknowledge that I'm feeling sad right now, or that I'm feeling grief because I've just lost someone really important to me, really dear to my heart, but you open up your heart again. And the download that's coming in right now, which I'm really excited about, is when you feel your wounds, you are opening up your heart. You are promoting an opening in your heart center, in your heart chakra. And what does that do? It allows for you to bring in, to funnel in, to usher in more light. But if your heart is closed because you're feeding a wound, this just came to me now. Bear with me. We feed our wounds because we are operating within an old format of reality, which was mind-driven. It was not heart-driven. So when we're complaining about our lives, when we're scowling at our situation, whatever it is that we do to energize those lower constructs of consciousness, we are operating from the mind. So you can say that your mind is experiencing mind control from these lower timelines, and every time you feed the wound, you are keeping that lower timeline alive. You are keeping those lower emotions and lower stories alive. But by feeling your wound, you are actually helping that aspect of yourself. You're literally outstretching, or metaphorically outstretching your hand, and you're saying, hey, you, I know you've been stuck there for 5 lifetimes, or I know that maybe it's a curse that was placed upon us by our family because they couldn't clear it for us, but I'm going to help you out of that war zone, and I'm going to take you in to my home. I'm going to house you, and I'm going to let you know that everything is safe, and it's okay if you feel scared. It's okay if you feel angry. I'm here for you. And every time you do that, you are building a bridge between the reality or the now moment you are currently standing on and the reality you want to experience. As opposed to, this is amazing, as opposed to building a bridge between the now that you're now standing on, or keeping a bridge alive with your past. And as long as that bridge is wide open and it is very energized and it is very active, you're going to keep getting pulled back in to that old narrative. And every time you get pulled into the old narrative, your energy is going to get funneled out. Okay? Now again, when we vent to our friends, we think that we feel better, which is an illusory belief, which is an illusory thought. It's just spiritual vomit. Okay? You are vomiting. You are regurgitating your emotions as opposed to processing your emotions. So the idea around feeling your wounds is that you're willing to sit with yourself and process through your emotional state. And whenever you process your emotional state, you are acknowledging those emotions, just like I acknowledge those thoughts when I get downloads, and it now can be housed within this living library that is the Akashic Records. You can now house those emotions and say, no rush, I'm here, there's nothing to fear. I'm here, there is nothing to fear. I just got that now. I'm here, there is nothing to fear. And you start to build a new bridge, a new rainbow bridge, a new plasma, light, crystalline bridge to the reality that you indeed want to experience. And you're not becoming your own impedance. You're not halting your own growth. So a lot of the times when we feed into the old wound, that energy is being redirected to the past, which the past really doesn't exist. It's just that it's so powerful in its alluring ways to pull you in or to rope you in or to hook into you, even though it doesn't exist. And rather than directing the energy to the next chapter, your energy keeps being directed to the old one. And it is by virtue of feeding the new construct, by feeling the wound, so you're feeding the new construct by feeling the wound, that you're actually going to propel yourself forward into everything that you want to experience. How is this resonating with everyone? Okay, good. Tears, good. So now, whenever you find that, because here's the thing, the mind is a very divisive device. The third dimensional mind, which cannot see above itself because it's so caught in self-absorption, it's so caught in fear, it's so caught in pain, it cannot see what is outside of it. So the mind is very divisive in that it wants to keep you from achieving that higher timeline. So our job is to catch ourselves whenever we want to feed the wound, because we're all going to have that chatterbox. Come on, complain, or talk about the weather, or blah, blah, you know. We're all going to have that chatterbox within us that is on replay. But we don't have to replay it. We actually don't have to feed into that. We don't have to entertain it. Because again, if we entertain it, we are feeding it. So the mind has to be tamed. It's like a beast that has to be tamed. It's a I don't like to think of the ego as having to be obliterated or deconstructed. The ego has to be re-domesticated. It has to be domesticated. So every time your ego program kicks into high gear and says to you, hey, talk about how horrible the weather is right now, or call your friend and talk about how you still don't understand why your dream hasn't come true. The idea, and I call this spiritual editing. You're going to start editing in real time. Editing. So every time your mind kicks into high gear and tries to influence you, it tries to take the reins of your life and brainwash you and reel you back in to that old programming. Because remember, the ego is just an old program that we are now we're transcending out of and into these higher layers of existence. So every time you feel like you want to entertain those old beliefs, instead, try to edit yourself in real time. And all you have to do is take a nice deep breath, 2 breaths, and pause yourself and say, all right, this energy is coming up right now, but what do I want to do with it? How do I want to direct this energy? Do I want to direct it to a newer reality, to everything that I've been desiring, everything I've been endeavoring to do and achieve and acquire? Or do I want to keep directing it to the old construct? And all it takes, you guys, is that 1 or 2 minutes of awareness, or even 1 second or 2 seconds of awareness to edit your internal program, to rewrite your internal program, to deprogram your old program and reprogram it with new crystalline light codes. How does that sound, you guys? So here's the thing. Feeling is going to allow you to integrate those aspects back into your beingness. Feeling is going to open up your heart, which automatically, immediately opens up your vibrational field, and then more light can pour in, and then you get to hold that light. This is how we expand the mind. We hold, we hold, we hold, we hold. We don't just regurgitate. Because that's like wasting precious life force that can build new worlds, that can birth new realities. So every time you open up your heart and you feel, you're bringing in those higher timelines, and you're that much closer to experiencing them in your physical world. Now, we don't do this for the physical aspect, so I just want to be clear. The physical reality automatically reshapes itself and responds according to your vibration, because your external reality is responsive to your internal one. And every time you feel and you open your heart wide open, you're going to be bridging those higher timelines and having them merge into your spiritual DNA, into your etheric DNA, into your physical DNA. And you're starting to anchor in those crystalline grids. And they're going to blossom in your internal garden, and they're going to become your external world, your external reality. Remember something, this is a very simple tip, but a very important one. Whenever you split off, whenever you separate off, you will know because you're venting. You will know because you're complaining. You will know because you're still doubting your universe. You're still doubting what your angelic team and what your galactic guides and your spiritual guides are orchestrating for you. So whenever you separate off, remind yourself, I am in my 3rd dimensional mind right now. Having the awareness that you're in your 3rd dimensional mind actually means that you're moving out of that and you're now switching back into your 5th dimensional identity, which is the overseer of your reality, which is the heart wide open. How do we access higher dimensions? By keeping our hearts open. When your heart is open, your higher mind is open, it's active. And that's how you start to get all these amazing downloads. All right. This is what it means to step onto the timeline of being a prime creator being of your personal soul matrix, of your personal reality. We are creator beings. All of us are creator beings. But whenever we feed the wound, all we're doing is we're keeping old realities that were once created alive. We're not creating a new. We're not creating a new. All we're doing is we're energizing and giving food to those older timelines that have already been created and are ready to be destroyed or transformed. There are different ways to look at this. So start using that energy Start utilizing your life force. Start utilizing your pristine crystal light to create or birth new realities. Or another way to see this or to perceive this is you're not really creating the new realities, you're anchoring them in. They've been waiting to file down because they're our future. The heaven on earth is our future. The abundance is our future. And I promise you one thing, because I've done this work, I'm doing work every day, but when you pull out of those old constructs, when you pull out of those lower mind constructs, everything starts to shift within your body, within your cellular makeup, within your molecular makeup. All these star particles, the cosmic dust within you starts to rearrange itself and reorganize itself to align a new reality for you. And we don't focus on the outside. We keep focused inside. We bring our gaze inwardly. And you start to work with your internal template. I call it like interior decorating, but you're kind of like a galactic decorator or a galactic interior designer. All right? So I think that's good right now. Remind yourself, when you're feeding a wound, you're in your third dimensional mind, and your mind has been formatted to divide everything. It wants to keep you from the higher timeline. It wants to keep you in the old story. Oh my God, I just have to keep going for a second. So, service to self, service to others. All right, we're gonna go a little more global or collective with this now. I gave you guys the personalized, individualized perspective. I'll just touch on, for just a few minutes, I'm gonna touch on the collective aspect. Service to others means that you're gonna feel your wound, because through doing that, you're doing shadow work for everyone. But when you feed your wound, you're being selfish, quote unquote selfish, which is okay, by the way, it's never judged. You have to go through your own experience. You have to burn your energy as you will. You have to go through your own processes and mechanisms. However, think to yourself, when you are feeding the wound, calling your friends, complaining about why it hasn't happened, or you know, just not comprehending why your universe hasn't brought to you what you want. When you are feeding the wound, you are selfish, quote unquote selfish, because you're not allowing for the planetary body of Gaia to ascend. You're not allowing for everyone else who's part of this reality, who's part at a collective level of every inhabitant of planet Earth, to move up into the higher layers, because you're feeding those lower timelines. And now those lower timelines are going to grab everyone. They're going to kidnap everyone spiritually, and it keeps wanting food. You know, it generates energy from lower vibrational emotions. So every time you feed a wound, you are feeding a lower vibrational emotion, which then gets sucked or harvested by these lower timelines, and that would be equated to being selfish, because you're not contributing, is the right word. You're not contributing to the planetary ascension of the collective consciousness. You're not contributing to the planetary ascension of the collective conscious. Got it? But when you're willing to sit there in the dark and feel everything that you're feeling, and you're now promoting a beautiful fusion, a beautiful merge, a beautiful blend, then you are being service to others, because you're going into uncharted waters and you're willing to do the work for everyone. You are an ambassador of the universe. You are an emissary of light. You are a galactic being with an amazing mission here on Earth. And we have to fulfill those. It was part of our contract. All right. So let's keep walking in love and light. I hope that this information is valuable to you guys, and I'm ready for questions. So you can raise your hand. Okay, good. So I'm going to go with hello.
Hello.
Hi, Olivia.
Hi. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Thank you.
So I would love to hear your perspective on the political climate as of late. I felt it like really heavily in the collective for the past few days. Like there's like this fear and anxiety, and I kind of feel like we're just being fed more and more into the construct of all of this. So I personally don't choose to vote, which, like, you know, it's everyone's personal choice, but I would just love to hear your perspective.
Absolutely. So it's definitely your prerogative not to vote. I would say that the higher council would say that we are not really being fed anything if we're awake. If we're awake, we've awakened to the fact that we get to choose and select exactly what we harmonize with and resonate with. So the fact that you haven't voted because it didn't resonate is 2 thumbs up, truly. Because there is a certain energy within the collective. To be honest, I'm not part of that collective, because from the viewpoint of a starseed, which a lot of you are, if you're interested in my messages, from the viewpoint of the starseed, or from those higher dimensional aspects, or from the overview, we are in the past right now. So starseeds have traveled back to the past to be able to seed energies of the future. So whenever I look at the political climate, I already know what's true. I already know I've already seen where we are when we all hold hands. So that's what's true for me. And so a lot of people who get riled up, or they get worked up when it comes to political climate, I would say that that's just a mirror effect of what they have going on within them. And the higher council would say that too. They would say that anything that manages to get a knee-jerk reaction out of you, to elicit a certain reaction out of you, is of your own soul matrix. It's an Akashic imprint that you need to clear. It's something you need to resolve within yourself. Now, there are some people who can be very much involved in the political stuff, but they enjoy it. They're not letting their emotions get worked up. And even if you get your emotions worked up, but you're consciously choosing to it's kind of like when you go to a football game, you're like, yeah, you know, like you're choosing to play in that game, but when the game's over, you know, like it was just a game. Some people might watch reality TV, and some may argue that it dumbs you down. It depends on where you're vibrating as far as your frequency bandwidth. I watch reality shows sometime and I enjoy it, but I'm choosing to do it. I'm not allowing myself to get sucked into the screen. Whenever people get overly worked up and they get angry, that's their own personalized traumas that they haven't resolved, dissolved, or evolved. That's been my new thing lately. You haven't resolved it, you haven't dissolved it, or you haven't evolved it. So I would say to you, because we are makers of our reality, because we are architects of our divine blueprints, it doesn't have to be relevant to you if you don't want it to. Like for me, it doesn't matter what happens in the political arena. I will still live the same life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
So I would say that you definitely honored yourself by not voting if it didn't resonate with you. Some people would dispute that and be like, nope, I think she should have voted to take a stance. You need to do, like, people need to do what's right for them. Because if we align with our spirit, if we align with our higher self, then we are on the trajectory towards our ascension timeline. If we disobey and we vote because other people want us to vote, then we're still programmed. We're still following the herd, if you will. We're still being herded like sheep. So the idea is to always honor what's true for you. Everything, with everything in life. If it's food, if it's a drink, if it's what you watch on television, that's the idea. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take another one. And we're going to go ahead and take Stacy Rowe. Hello, Stacy. Oh, let me see.
Hello.
Hi, Stacy. How are you this evening?
I'm
Can
good.
you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You might have to get a little closer to the microphone.
Okay. Is that better?
A little bit, but we'll work with it. We'll work with it.
I just typed my question.
Is practice the only way to shut off, eliminate the fears I have from my past? By practice, you mean spiritual practice?
Yes.
Okay. Giving it energy is bad, I know, but my question is, what is blocking me? Okay, giving it energy is bad. but my question is, what is blocking me from letting it go? Is there a trick? I know I need to let go. Maybe this will help someone else. Okay, so what I'm getting for you is, so we are human, so there is such a thing as right or wrong or good or bad. Like, I don't think anyone should be killing anyone. That would be considered bad. However, every soul has to go through what they have to go through. Like, you can't tell someone not to kill. Like, if it's in them, they're going to do what they're going to do. But from what I teach people is, like, let's start taking the overview. When you say feeding it is bad, it's not bad. We want to get out of the dualistic language, because anytime we use words like bad or good, it keeps us stuck in that timeline. So just by the mere act of you releasing the judgment around your experience, you're going to start to shift yourself into a new matrix. All right? Matrix isn't bad. I'm talking about the crystalline, fifth dimensional new earth reality. You're going to start switching yourself in that. So removing the good or bad is really helpful. That's the first thing. Also, maybe in 2011, 2012, it was really important for us to be diligent about our practices. But I'm like a forerunner. I consider myself to be a forerunner, as I'm sure a lot of you are. We awakened before 2012, and we had to kind of go through a lot of heavy duty energies, you know? And why we did that is so that we can dissect and study. It's like spiritual research. We studied like all of the nuances of energy so that people who are awakening now don't have to, because it was a very abrupt, aggressive awakening where we had to slog our way through a lot of energies. So I would say that the meditative practice doesn't have to be as conventional as it once was. If you feel like you connect to nature, then I say by all means, go ahead and do that. If you want to sit by a tree, go ahead and do that. One thing I will say is important though, is let's start to energize, just like we're feeling our wounds rather than feeding our wounds. Let's start to energize our inner senses over our external senses, because we're so inundated with so much stimuli from the external world, you know, music, this, like you go to a gas station now and there's TV, you know, it's crazy. We're so inundated that it is advisable to, if you go into nature, go without your earphones, go without music. If you meditate or you go for a walk, go without music. I think it's really important to replenish our inner senses, because that will activate your inner vision, your inner sight, which will allow for you to see into the unseen realms. But I think for you, what will be very helpful, anytime it's okay to say good or bad. Like, I really don't want to rob people of their experience. I will say things like that as well, because we are humans as well. And it's really great when you can be a human and also take the overview. But just subtracting those words from your experience, I think will help you a lot, because it's going to bring you back into the 0 point field, which is the space of neutrality. And as you release the judgment in your field, you're now going to open up your field again rather than contract your field, and more light is going to be able to suffuse you.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I hope that helps you.
Yes, it does.
Okay, great. Thank you for asking the question.
Thank you.
So we're going to go with another question, and let's go. We're going to go with Willow Rockwell. So Willow.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, Willow. How are you this evening?
I'm great. I literally just said, pick me.
Oh,
Yeah. Hey, so I have a question. Do you ever feel like sometimes you're getting so bombarded by energies because you're really just meant to clear it and you just have to stay in it instead of be so like above it all, you know, because some days I'll go for like a couple days and I'm like, I know I'm in it and I have to stay in it. I can't really get out of it, but then like it'll just clear.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Does that happen to you?
I'm
Yeah.
going to give you a really, not the best analogy right now, but
Sure.
I did with myself is whenever I get, it's very much can be likened to when you go into meditation, it takes a while for your mind to quiet.
Mm-hmm.
So I let my thoughts spin around and even beat me up sometimes. It's not that I let them beat me up. I'm not like an abuser or anything, but I let them express themselves. I let them if they need to. And within 15, 20 minutes, I start to sink into this very calm oasis within me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very normal that you will feel like and by energies, do you mean like more negative energies? Like, is that
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So even in like the astral, I had this wild experience where it's like in my lineage, I've gone through a lot of stuff like rape and abuse in my family. And so literally like 3 nights ago, my father was there and I like had this dream and he was like pestering me. And my guides told me to go back in the dream and I cleared it. It was incredible. And I felt so high like the next morning, you know what I mean? Like this huge clearing. And then it was like that next evening for the next 2 nights, it's like, then it was my mother and my aunts. It was like, I was back in it and I knew what was happening, but then I was like, I don't know. I just wonder if you have like a way to deal with it, or if you just sort of like deal with it because you know you're going to get through it. Like, how do you do that when it gets so intense?
I do my best not to bypass, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like every once in a while you have to summon your warrior, your
Totally.
you know,
Yeah.
and come on, you know, I'm choosing reality, which is a very valid perspective because I feel like that's operating within the now. And
Mm-hmm.
within the now, there is no time. So there is no past, no future. So within the now, we get to choose.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this thought is coming up. I'm going to choose this other one instead. And
Mm-hmm.
by entraining, I call it like entrainment, by entraining to those higher frequencies, you are choosing in that moment to feed a new construct of reality. However, what I like to do is feel it. I like to feel it. I also got messages from my guides while you were talking. They showed me that you were like emptying your cache. You know, when you like go on Safari a lot and it's like not working, it's not as functional. You were emptying your cache.
Mm-hmm.
Also, this might be why I got this vision this morning. I'm going to share it with you and take with it what you please and leave what doesn't resonate. On my way to the gym this morning, there was a car that wasn't paying attention, so there was an opportunity for me to cut into their lane. But there was tons of space. Like I put my blinker and everything. I try not to. Sometimes we manipulate people. We don't put our blinkers. I do not do that stuff. So you guys, if ever you try to manipulate your way into a lane, it is not healthy. I find that whenever I open my heart and I'm asking permission through my signal, people usually respond very positively to me. But when I try to finagle my way in, it backfires in some way, and it's because I'm attracting that experience into my reality because now my heart is closed. And if my heart is closed, I'm in the mind, I'm in the playing field of everyone else who's in the mind, or I'm triggering them in some way. So I always put my blinkers. But as I was cutting into this lane, I got this vision, not of them, because they were totally cool with me doing that. I got a vision of how some people will be like, oh, I can't believe this person just cut in my lane. And they want to blame it on them when they're the ones who weren't being attentive. And so I got this vision that different energies or entities they operate the same way. So whenever we're unconscious, they can cut into your lane, into your mind, and try to manipulate you. And then you get an opportunity to rewrite the story. So with this particular example with the lane, most people would be like, I can't believe, this person just cut into my lane. No, I'm going to rewrite that and say, no, this person saw that I wasn't paying attention and they went ahead of me, and I'm not going to project my stuff onto them. So what I like to do with everything, energies, thoughts, I go, what am I feeling right now that I need to be accountable for?
Mm-hmm.
And just by doing that, I'm not judging the experience. I'm not pointing a finger at my thoughts. And by virtue of doing this, I get to correct the energy in that story. It's no different than if you go through a very traumatic time like the rape or the whatever, and you go back into that timeline and you say, what are some of the negative thoughts I had about that story that I can now erase or replace or assign a new understanding to? And by doing this, you are actually quantum hopping into that timeline and rewriting the story, which is what you did, which is so great. You cleared the cache. You cleared that particular timeline.
Cool. Thanks, Phil.
You're so welcome. Thank you. So let's see. Let's go with Odie. Odie, did I say your name correctly?
Yes, it's Udi.
Odi.
Udi, either one is fine. Hi, Phil.
Hi, Odi. Hi, welcome.
Hi. So, why did you suddenly go quiet? Like quieter? Like I
Right.
heard you fine. Yeah, I heard you fine till now, and then suddenly you went quieter.
You mean like for a split second?
No, now.
Oh, I'm
Like
not.
you're quiet. Do you hear me?
I hear you perfectly. Do you hear
I heard
me?
you fine the whole time, and then when you said my name, kind of it went a little quieter.
Huh. How is it now?
Same.
Okay, let me see. Let's see here. I'm going to mute myself and unmute myself. 1 second. Okay. Hello?
Yeah, still quiet. I don't know.
Do you have your okay, I think it could be because it's the mic. Exactly. I think it's the mic when someone comes on. It was like that before too. Exactly. I think that's what it is. It's the mic.
Ugh.
So there's
How do
feedback.
you,
I hear you very well. You know what you can do? Go ahead and ask your question, and then I'm going to go ahead and mute you and respond.
Okay. So it's a little bit of a heavy question. I hope nobody minds. I'm doing a lot of work in reference to my childhood and things like that. There was a lot of molestation and for many, many years. And then after that, it seemed to have followed me. And then just around a lot of dishonesty around sex, affairs, dishonesty and lies and cheating and all of that. And it seems to follow. And I'm 39 years old and I, kind of like still dealing with it and I'm working through it. And for the first time, I'm able to, instead of victimize myself over it, try to understand why this is happening to me and the way it's, and taking responsibilities for my own stuff. And so just today I thought to myself, did I do this? Just like it was almost like it felt like a download and it felt real to me. So I don't know. I said, I understand that the soul prepares my soul prepared my life's journey. But I started, but why this? And I said, did I do this to someone else did I like sexually abuse them? Like, why is this following me? I feel like dishonesty, sex, everything around sex and relationships and lying and cheating. And it kind of like, and I'm proud because it's the first time now that I'm looking deeper and taking responsibility and feeling the pain, is trying to sit with the pain. It's been pretty difficult the last week and a half.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and respond that.
Okay.
Okay, great. So I'm going to mute you just for a second. So that's a very good question. I'm feeling guided right now to not focus on the past or the future. I want to focus on the present. So why would your soul architect this particular blueprint for you, or this life plan where you would go through the molestation and all these issues surrounding sex? Why? Well, because it knew that this would be the very thing that would grow you the most if you responded in a way that would evolve you. So everything that we go through, there is no accident. If something happens, I'm of the belief that God allowed it to happen. It doesn't mean it was meant to happen, because some people can operate from more of that service to self or evil or narcissistic or whatever, right? I prefer to get out of that right now, but some people do things that are not okay. They're not appropriate. So, but God still allowed it, or God's source, universe. I don't want to impose the word God on you guys. God's source allowed for that to happen and is going to work on your personal development after the fact. So some people might choose, for instance, they get diagnosed with cancer. And they say, why cancer? Why couldn't it just be that I lost my hair, or that someone broke up with me? Pain is something that we go through within duality, because it's through pain that we grow, right? We have to do this until we awaken and we're like, whoa, let's go like this now, right? Let's start to birth into these new timelines. Let's start to expand our field like no tomorrow. So I will say to you, the reason why you've been through all of this is because your universe knew that that would be the exact thing that would trigger you the most. And it's how you would find your power. It's how you would recall your power again. So it's very likely that through this journey of sex and so on and so forth, you harbored resentment, you got furious at times. And we do this when we're unconscious because, again, we're governed by these lower beliefs that we're not enough. And we give our power away by thinking that we're inadequate, by thinking that we're less than, by feeling unworthy. We give our power away. All of us, myself included, did this before I awakened. And we prepare the stage, if you will. We prepare the stage so that once we awaken, we go, whoop, let me clear that. Let me undo that. It's like a knot that you undo. Oop, let me do that. Let me reverse that polarity. So it's almost like you go into all these polarities before you awaken. I always see it as a clock. So you go clockwise and you accumulate all this dirt and all this manure and all this impurity. And then once you awaken, you can work with every single energy and go the opposite direction, reversing the polarity, and that's how you come back to your true self. So for instance, if, Odi, I meet you, okay, and we become friends, and I start compromising myself, and I'm always there with you all the time, and I start to build resentment because I'm making so many exceptions, well, I've now accumulated reference points or things that I can work with, and once I'm ready to take my power back, we might have some riffraffs, or we might have some tiffs, but I'm coming back to my power now. This is what God does to experience expansion. It has to go through all these different duality, the light, the dark. It has to shrink down to then reopen up and expand. So that's why your soul decided to experience life in this fashion, because it knew that you would awaken through these different components. And if you were dealing with something else right now where you're very strong, like you have a strong suit in money, like let's say you're not fazed by money. Well, if you're not fazed by money and you have a money problem, you're not going to be fazed by it. So how is your soul going to grow? How are you going to add to your collection of wisdom? So your soul knew exactly what you needed, right? It's like Cinderella. Like her soul knew exactly what she needed, like those two stepsisters or whatever, to make her feel disempowered so that she can eventually see that she was divine the entire time and that she doesn't actually have to play in that game anymore. And by not playing in that game anymore, meaning catching yourself and editing yourself in real time and not feeding the wound, but rather feeling the wound, by not playing in that game anymore, you're taking your power back. And every time you take it, think of your power as like a source of light. And the more light you bring into your body, the vaster your soul container becomes. And the vaster your soul container becomes, the more clicked in you are to infinite reality. So you become multidimensional. So for me, I have all these, sometimes we think our realities are outside of us. They're not. They're in here. So for me, I can go, all right, let's turn on the Syrian reality. Let's turn on the Archangel reality. Let's turn on my future reality. Let's turn on this. And you can have fun because all the realities are inside. They're like a switchboard. You get to switch on the ones you want. So the more that you expand your mind, the more realities you have access to. So you gain access to all these infinite records of information. So I hope that helps you, Odi. And I thank you for asking the question. And yes, you said the key word. You were victimizing yourself. And so that was the very pattern that you had to break, or the very pattern that you had to de-pattern. So to come out of your own cycle and come back to your God self or your divine self or your deity self. And you wouldn't have done that. The contrast wouldn't have been as pronounced had you just been victim your whole life or not victim at all your whole life. And now you get to experience the cosmic explosion of what it feels like to be the universe again. So thank you for asking your question. So I think we have time for one more or maybe two. We'll see what happens. I'm going to go with let's see. I'm going to go with Charlene Cheng. Hello, Charlene.
Okay, I've just unmuted myself. Hello.
Hello, how are you this evening?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you. So my question is in reference to the collective. And what's funny is that this morning, I was on Instagram and came across a message that resonated very negatively just on the realm of the collective. And it sort of pertains to this sort of other women who are challenging other healers. And these are women who may be healers themselves because of the color of their skin. And so I know that there are a lot of layers to this, and there's a really long history of cultural appropriation, but this negative and divisive discourse seems to be more detrimental than beneficial. And so I felt so kind of compelled to respond in some way, but not knowing what to do, because this is, I think, so that discourse is so present in our community. So what do we do? Or, you know, how do we, as a collective, move forward in a positive manner?
That's a great question. So the first thing is, it's always okay to respond. If you, like, you'll find that on my Instagram, I comment back sometimes, but I never do it for the person. I'm doing it for everyone else, the tribe, you know? So it's not that I'm trying to change the person who actually commented. I'm adding perspective for everyone to be able to access, because I think it's important information. So if you're sharing from that viewpoint, then I think it's always, it can be pretty impactful and advantageous for people. In terms of the spiritual community, I have seen it myself a lot. Anytime I hear a psychic or I hear a healer downplay another healer's ability, to me, that screams duality. It screams division, separation. And so I don't feed into that. And that's usually a telltale sign that they're not practicing unity consciousness. And I'm of the belief that everyone can help someone. You know, I think that even if you're not spiritually awakened, you can go help someone who's homeless on the street. So it's to varying degrees, but everyone has the wherewithal to help another person. And so whenever you see this kind of thing, first off, we do want to address the trigger. I feel triggered at times too. I will go in and let it go. Usually when I let it go and don't say anything, I can feel like a boost in my vibration. I don't know if you felt that today. Did you?
Yes.
Okay. Did you end up replying or not at all?
I did not end up replying. What I did was I actually reached out to another healer that I really look up to and who's resonated with me, just to pose the question to see if that question resonates with her, and then to share it with her community and to bring it up as a discussion through the support group.
Okay. I think the discussion is okay. It's an okay thing to have, as long as it doesn't berate the other girl or reprimand her critical view of this other healer. I think it's always okay to speak in a way that's like neutral, where you're not judging people, but you're just bringing information to light. I call it spiritual research. Like, I'm constantly researching and examining different energies, and I can talk about them without polarizing service to self or polarizing negative. And I think if you have the ability to speak, you're a very good speaker, by the way. So I just want to say that to you.
Oh, thank you.
It sounds to me like you bring a lot of consciousness. It wouldn't surprise me at all if you start helping a lot of people in this field, because there's a certain energy of your voice that's very soothing and you're just very conscious. You're a good communicator. So I think if you're able to bring that to the table and to bring that into the fold, then it's all good.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're so welcome. And thank you for asking the question. I appreciate it. So how are we doing on time? Is it, I think I'm going to do one more, you guys. I'm going to do one more. I'm very grateful to all of you for being here right now. Thank you. So, Elizabeth Mueller, it's Mueller. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
Good. I can't believe you picked up. I wasn't expecting it. I guess my question mostly revolves around, like, everything you say makes very clear sense, but in the face, I was woken up because of a health crisis, a physical health and emotional and spiritual health crisis. And I've grown so much from it, and I feel so thankful. and it lingers despite how much I'm high vibing. It lingers, and I can't, in that moment, that knee-jerk reaction, the resistance to the physical symptoms, like it's, it's stuck. It's like 6 years stuck. So I'm trying to, I guess, vibe up in the face of in and out of the physical. And I think I posted this on your wall, like just some days I'm in the flow and I feel it, and then I just bottom out. And it's this up and down, sometimes brought on by physical, sometimes it just seems out of nowhere. And it's like this kind of bipolar feeling that I think a lot of people can relate to,
of course,
as you're awakening.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. That's where I stand, I guess.
Totally. So we all have a toroidal field around us. It's like this spinning rotational field around us. It's our auric field, if you will. Well, from my own experience, whenever I'm feeling flat, it means that I'm still switched into, I guess you could say I'm still functioning from the third dimensional construct. And the second that I connect to my breath, I start to invite plasmic energy into my body and automatically switch into the higher matrices. And I can feel like I'm working with dragons. I'm working with, it's a completely different reality. Like everything is breathing, the air is breathing, everything's moving. Everything looks different too. And then I can conjure up fire, I have found that we can't be in that space all day long. We can be, but there's beauty in feeling flat. And whenever I feel flat, I go, okay, let's just sit low in this experience and see which data we can collect from this state of being.
Right.
And I find that very helpful. So if you find that you're vibrating higher to avoid the pain, I would say instead lean into the pain. And I'm not suggesting that that's what you're doing. I'm just saying if that happens to be the case, that you want to vibrate highly because you want to avoid the pain, instead try to lean into the pain and collect as much as you can. You may even find different portals or different gateways where you can still access those other dimensional realms through the pain.
Right.
It's an interesting thing. Obviously, physical pain can hinder that a little bit, but if you can work with your energetic template while you're in the pain and find those exit doors or those back doors into the cosmos, then that can be helpful as well. And then whenever you do feel higher energetics, higher magnetics, enjoy that. And I like to state to my universe, I want to feel this all day long. Because my thing is I need to meditate in order to click in. And it takes me 2 minutes, like less than 20 seconds actually, to activate my pineal gland and move through that stargate. But when you wake up, you just want to chill. You just want to go to the gym. You just want to, be a human for a little bit. But when I'm in that high vibratory state, I say, universe, I'm commanding you to bring more of that to me throughout the day.
Yeah, it's just my physical body just takes a beating, it feels like, from all of it. I don't know if it's past stuff and then I sink into despair.
The physical body is going to take a beating, to be honest, because every program that's still deeply embedded within your bones, your flesh, your teeth, everything. I mean, these programs were deeply, deeply imprinted within your body, within your DNA. Everything's being gutted out. Everything's being dispelled of. So your physical body's for sure going to take a hit because it's having to lighten the load. So the more that you lean into it and don't fight the process or resist the process, the more you're going to be collaborating with your guides in this surgical operation or this restructural operation. So I would say lean into the pain, but definitely, I think most of us still have that struggle that we deal with. I've asked my guides about this in the past, and they're like, Phil, you're probably going to have it the rest of your life because it keeps you focused, because it keeps you in gratitude, because it keeps you humble. It reminds you of where you've come from, and it also allows you to work within the framework of consciousness. So I tend to think that we're not always going to struggle, but there might always be like a little remnant of something from our past because it keeps us calling on God or source or the universe.
Right.
It's humble. So whenever you feel the physical pain, try to pinpoint similar patterning or something that you might be able to tweak, even if it's the most minute tweak in that moment, and then keep working with that energy.
Yeah, my guys just keep saying patience, endurance, fortitude. I right now I have really pretty intense rashes on my eyes and on my hands, and they've been there for months. And seems silly, but it's excruciating, and it's like patience, fortitude. I'm like, oh my gosh, this lesson.
A lot of it is your light body's activating. And
Mm.
you have all these crystals that are starting to grow in your body that are starting to come to life. And the old system, which is also representative of the old 3D construct, the old system is going to fight. It's going to fight. It's like, it's going to fight for every last breath it can take. So I would say patience for sure. Patience for sure. And sometimes when we feel the pain and we just surrender, fully surrender to your universe, to your new crystalline template, that's a meditation in itself. It's like you almost don't have to meditate in those moments because the pain in itself is yanking out anything that doesn't belong there anymore.
Yeah.
We're going through massive overhaul, massive DNA reconfiguration. So
Right.
there's going to be a battle between the new world and the old world, between the newer programs that we're installing and the old programs that are now being uninstalled by the higher programs. So as long as we keep leaning into the silver lining, focusing on that, then the newer programs are going to naturally uninstall the old programming.
Yeah, my guides told me my hand chakras are being completely realigned and going to be used for I guess healing work, and my eyes, I guess we'll see things differently when this is all over.
I've had a lot of pain in my feet. Like I still go through it a little bit sometimes, but for a whole year and a half, wherever I'd be sitting, it doesn't matter if it's at a coffee shop or at home, my toes would curl up and I'd have to squeeze them. And it hurt like hell, but in a way, it wasn't physical pain. I had to then connect it to my solar plexus chakra and take a very specific breath. But my feet were doing this really weird thing, and it was painful, excruciating. Yeah. And now, like just last week, I was at the coffee shop and I had my foot up like this, and I was shooting fire out of my feet, and I could actually spin the energy and manipulate the energy with my feet. So my feet have become like these hands. We have portals in our hands, in our feet. We have this ability to do all these amazing things. So, of course, patience with yourself, also being gentle with your thoughts. If ever you have like a self-deprecating thought or a self-critical thought, try to be more gentle with yourself. Overall, I'm seeing that you're on a beautiful path right now, and everything's going to change for you coming around March or April. Something's going to change fully. So March, April. So look for that.
Okay. Last time we spoke, you said January, so we'll push it back.
Well, it can push back. Again, within the linear mindset, if we're still feeding the wound, we delay our manifestations. So I want everyone to understand this. Everything is changeable. So if last time you asked me, you had a negative thought since then, or you're still feeding that wound, it can delay.
Yeah.
You have to get to a place where, like, if we've asked something or we know something, then we have to stay with it and feel it. Process, okay. Right? Otherwise, you're gonna be delaying that process.
Right. And by trying to hold on to it, I think I delayed it by trying to even rush it.
And it's delayed, but you can reverse it now.
Yeah.
And everything is malleable. Just know that everything is malleable. So if you get back on track with it and you're like, I'm gonna process through this, and I'm gonna trust the answers I'm receiving, right? Whether it be from me or from my guides, I'm going to trust that. Then you speed up the process of healing, because our bodies are self-regenerative. Our bodies are self-repairing. So there's no question that this can heal for you. No question.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right. So I want to thank everyone for showing up tonight. I hope that you enjoyed it. And I'm very happy to be alongside all of you on this magical journey. And I will see you next time. And I will go ahead and upload this to Vimeo, and I will see you soon. Love you guys so much. Thank you.